Team 1, Fire Team 1 from the ship inside of their area. We still have reports of 2 people missing.
A shipboard fire is among the most severe emergencies mariners can face. And if that fire erupts in port, officers and crews face added challenges. You have more resources to help fight the fire, but you also have new roles and new responsibilities.
We have crews coming up to assist. That's our only access.
Yeah, there's only access. Other side.
Fighting fires in port tests more than your knowledge of fire safety. This program is about the communications process, too. Both the ship and the shore want to put fires out quickly and safely, but sometimes they have different ideas about how to do it.
I think the captain, at this point in time, has to be aware that the firefighting resources from the local departments will be very, very anxious to help, but won't have much of an idea of how they can help.
You have a much better firefighting evolution if you can get the people on the ship to share their information with the people on the shore, and that's really a critical link.
Fire in port, the ship-shore interface, is in 4 parts: communicating effectively, the fire plan and its importance, the incident command system, and coordinating the ship-shore response to the fire.
There's not a whole lot of firemen that want to be a marine firefighter because they're not the friendliest fires that we can face.
Do you have a mate who can help him?
We'll follow the action in an actual ship-shore fire exercise and hear expert commentary from some of the key players, including the United States Coast Guard, which monitors fire safety practices in American ports.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said that certainly in a crisis, the best decision is the right decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision, and the worst decision is no decision.
Our focus here is on the ship side of the ship-shore interface. What's different about fighting a fire when you're in port? What's the same? And what should you do? A fire emergency on a ship at sea is different from a fire emergency in a ship in port in 2 important ways.
First, in the case of a fire in port, the local community may be able to offer additional resources, search and rescue, medical assistance, and firefighting from both the land and water sides. Second, the fire on your ship endangers that community, the dock facility, and the navigation channel or waterway.
Hey, smoke.
In any fire emergency, immediate reporting of the fire and sounding of the alarm are critical. Within minutes, the crew should be mustered, assigned stations, and begin their standard firefighting procedures, from size up through search and rescue, and ultimately attacking the fire itself. What's different about a fire in port is that for the captain and the other officers especially, reporting the fire is only the beginning of the communications process.
Yeah, Dick, this is the captain on Vessel Belinda. We have had an explosion and there's a huge fire raging in the Fort Fossil store right now.
Incident notification should be immediate. Inform the proper authorities on shore, seek out additional resources for help, and respond to the concerns of the shoreside officials.
When you're in port, your list of emergency contacts expands dramatically beyond the usual owners, operators, agents, and insurers. You should have a current list or quick access to a list of local contacts as well: fire and police agencies, emergency service agencies, port authorities, local governments.
Chief Engineer, come in. Okay, could you send the fire department up to the cargo office, please?
Depending on the severity of the incident, you may need other resources as well: cleanup companies, towing companies, salvage companies, the Pilots Association.
Chief Officer of the Belinda from Longview, Engine 1. We've arrived on your ship and we would like you to meet with us and tell us what your problem is.
When we're fighting fires in buildings, the buildings basically stay placed in one spot. When we're doing a ship vessel fire, That vessel can move on you, it can list on you, it can sag on you, it can hog on you, and it does a lot of things that buildings aren't going to do.
The fire is still out of control.
As critical as a shoreside firefighter's lack of experience with maritime fires is a lack of specific information. That's where the true interface between the ship and the shore must begin, with communications and teamwork.
Communication is a real big thing, and the vessel crews just have just a wealth of knowledge. You know, they know the vessel, they know the spaces, they know the equipment they have on board, they know what products they're carrying, and the major hurdle that we need to overcome is to get the communication between those people on the ship and the people on the shore.
Communication. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? The ship side talking to the shore side. But try it in a real emergency. That's why there's already a piece of communication in place to help you. It specifically tells the shoreside firefighters how to come aboard your ship and help you fight a fire. It's the ship's fire control plan.
Got 3 entrances. We have got an entrance.
Shoreside firefighters like to know what they're getting into even before they board your ship.
This has got ventilation.
Give us a mental picture of where that fire is and where the crew is. That's the greatest, and they meet us at the gangway. That would be the greatest help of any crew that we could get.
A well-prepared crew should meet the shoreside firefighters on the gangway with a copy of the fire plan in hand. The fire plan should be weatherproofed and stored in a clearly marked container in case you're not there in person to deliver it.
Is that ventilation on right now?
The fire plan gives firefighters the layout of the ship, location of fire stations and fire suppression systems, hose stations, ventilation systems, and the structural features built into the ship to keep fires at bay.
Who do I make contact with when I get there?
You will be meeting the chief mate or the first engineer who are at the seat of fire.
Okay.
Few things you do during a fire in port are as critical as simply meeting with your shoreside counterparts as soon as possible, briefing them as fully as possible, and reviewing the fire control plan. When you meet with the shoreside firefighters, be prepared also to give them a crew list and status. Is everyone accounted for? Inform them of any hazardous or special cargo, where the extinguishing systems are and their status, and the location of the international shore connection.
We have commenced boundary cooling.
Make sure your onboard training incorporates the fire plan, the international shore connection, and all the other communications that need to go from ship to shore during an emergency.
Most shoreside firefighters, and that's who we're going to call on, do not know their way around ships, do not know the complexities of it, and of course then you have to integrate the firefighting operations side into the incident command system, and firefighting is certainly a big part of that, but you also have the potential for a major pollution case, you have the potential for loss of life, you have the potential for catastrophic failure of the vessel, and firefighters aren't used to dealing with that. They're used to, in this area, dealing with structural fires.
At this point, we have a fire in the engine room on this container vessel.
In the United States port, shoreside firefighters will use the Incident Command System, or ICS, to manage their emergency response activities.
To understand the interface between the ship and the shore in an emergency, you need to understand the Incident Command System. ICS helps create order out of disorder. And even in a small emergency, the principles of incident command can help you organize your people and organize your effort.
We use the incident command system and the unified command for all of our major incidents now, and it doesn't make any difference if it's a search and rescue case or a pollution case or a fire. That system is very good at putting the trained people in the key section chief job, and it does a very good job of feeding the right information so that you can make the real timely decisions.
The Incident Command System organizes the crisis response into 5 key areas: command, which makes all response decisions; operations, which carries out the action plans; planning, which collects information and allocates resources; logistics, which provides facilities, services, and material; and finance, which handles financial and cost analysis.
The Coast Guard and most of the emergency response agencies in the United States are going to the ICS. If they know that, then they know all they have to do is look for the incident commander or the operations section chief, and if they can contact those people, it may be chaotic with a lot of people running around, but if they understand the ICS system and they know who to ask for, chances are that they can establish communications a lot better.
Often, the shoreside incident commander will form a unified command with the leaders of the other agencies and the ship's captain to better manage the fire emergency. The unified command will meet together at a central command post, which may be on the ship or on the shore. You may find it hard to leave your ship in an emergency. Likewise, the local fire chief may want to control his team from the shore.
I think it's realistic that the captain probably would not want to come off, at least not initially. And so for the land-based firefighters, that creates another communication challenge. They have to communicate with that master, but at the same time, they're probably going to be staging their operation on the shore.
Operations requesting a short...
Key players from each involved agency or interest gather quickly and agree on common objectives and individual duties.
Our priority may not be the port's priority, and then that's where the incident command system comes into effect, even on a small vessel fire, is that when we go there and the port guy's saying, I want that thing moved and I want it out of here, and we're saying, no, we're going to fight it, we have to come to a discussion and an understanding of we have the people and the product to put this out without harming our port.
You don't want people making decisions in a vacuum, and if you don't have some sort of system to organize all these different agencies together and have them communicate, share ideas and share plans, then otherwise you get people acting independently and possibly not support each other's efforts, or they might do things that kind of counteract the other person's efforts. And so by doing a coordinated effort, that's the key to the ICS, and that's why it does work.
Okay, so it's been an hour from the start of the fire till now.
The response to the fire is where all your training and preparation are put to the test. Typically, fires are either attacked directly or isolated and smothered indirectly.
Both the ship-based and the shoreside firefighters should have the same priorities. First, protect human life, search and rescue. Next, exposure, prevent the spread of the fire. Third, confinement, control the fire. And finally, extinguishment, suppressing the main body of the fire.
There are a variety of ways to respond to a fire. For the incident commander and his team, the process of determining how to attack is called the size-up. Sizing up the fire begins when you gather facts and assess the probabilities. What are the likely scenarios and their outcomes? You determine what resources are available and apply firefighting principles. And you decide on a course of action and a plan of operation.
Certainly you want to cool down the fire and use water as much as you can to get the fire out, but at a certain point you have to consider stability, and if you're putting a lot of that weight, especially up high in the vessel, at a certain point it's going to become unstable, and so you need to be aware of that. The firefighters need to be aware of that.
One firefighter said, you fight fires on ships with information as much as with manpower. Because there are confined spaces on ships and ways to seal off these spaces, it's not uncommon to simply shut off the fuel supply, isolate the fire, and let it smother, or use an in-place extinguishing system. The key is to protect what's around the fire. Boundary cooling is one method, keeping water on the adjacent areas. But there are cautions in this procedure, too. No matter what method you choose to put out the fire, there must be constant status reporting and good communication among the team.
We have the second casualty out, and he is badly burnt and unconscious.
Communications are often the weak link in any sort of emergency response, and those problems are compounded on a ship because your two-way radios and walkie-talkies and stuff don't work well down in the engine rooms and in the holds.
As you can see, fighting a fire in port requires training, communication skills, and flexibility. So, by way of summary, Here are 4 tips on how you can make the interface between ship and shore firefighting work.
First, make sure you assign roles and responsibilities for communication and not just for firefighting.
It's just critical that you know what you've got and what your capabilities are so that you can mitigate the impact of the incident.
Second, set up exercises, training, and orientation that bring the ship and shore together. When you're in port, invite them aboard to get to know you and your ship.
The future is drilling together so everybody knows what each other's doing, because then you can add extra people into your complement.
Third, emphasize the importance of your fire safety plan and use it as an integral part of your training process.
Fire safety plan, that's number one. And that's specifically for the shoreside people to go on board and know where the firefighting resources are, know the layout of the ship. So it's critical that the shoreside people get that fire safety plan.
Finally, there is absolutely no substitute for realistic hands-on training. For fire safety, it should be at least once a week.
There's an old military maxim that says, as you train, so will you fight. And because we do a good job at preventing disasters, we really do have to find a way of keeping up to the step, ready to go for the rare times that they occur. Training's the only way.
If your ship has regular ports of call, or you're on an extended stay, make an effort to learn about the land-based fire facilities. Get to know the fire crews. Invite them on board the ship for a tour. That familiarization and communication could save lives and property in the event of a real fire emergency.
The transfer of fuel oil into a vessel, bunkering, requires diligence, safety consciousness, and proper procedures. Safe bunkering is the product of good communication, proper crew training, and compliance with international, federal, and local laws. The safe bunkering procedures you'll see presented here come from those 3 sources: internationally accepted maritime practices, the United States Coast Guard regulations, and the brand new guidelines of a local regulator, the Washington State Office of Marine Safety. You'll see and hear a collection of transfer tips, timely reminders throughout the program on handling oil safely. You'll see and hear safe procedures listed, explained, and illustrated. And you'll see and hear the state-of-the-art in marine safety, Washington State's new bunkering guidelines.
Now the deck roving watch is...
Maritime safety is a people process. Virtually every marine accident or oil spill is the result of human error. It's well-trained people working conscientiously together that make safe seamanship a reality.
Since the enactment of the Oil Pollution Act of '90, there's been a tremendous consciousness, on the part of all, both the regulators and the customers, being our mariners, to the fact that no longer will we tolerate having oil going into our environment.
We're just going to have to watch these containment locations to make sure they don't fill up with rainwater.
Right.
A good bunkering operation begins with proper preparation, sharing key information, explaining correct procedures, establishing communication links, reviewing pre-loading plans, providing crew education and training.
Everybody who's involved in the training session should be told everything about the bunker operation, not only their own job, but they should be sitting there listening when the other person's job is being talked about, so they have a full understanding of the fact that communication in almost all operations is critical.
Team 1, Fire Team 1 from the ship inside of their area, we still have reports of 2 people missing.
A shipboard fire is among the most severe emergencies mariners can face. And if that fire erupts in port, officers and crews face added challenges. You have more resources to help fight the fire, but you also have new roles and new responsibilities.
We have crews coming up to assist. That's our only access.
Yeah, that's the only access. This other side.
Fighting fires in port tests more than your knowledge of fire safety. This program is about the communications process, too. Both the ship and the shore want to put fires out quickly and safely, but sometimes they have different ideas about how to do it.
I think the captain, at this point in time, has to be aware that the firefighting resources from the local departments will be very, very anxious to help, but won't have much of an idea of how they can help.
You have a much better firefighting evolution if you can get the people on the ship to share their information with the people on the shore, and that's really a critical link.
Fire in port, the ship-shore interface, is in 4 parts: communicating effectively, the fire plan and its importance, the incident command system, and coordinating the ship-shore response to the fire.
There's not a whole lot of firemen that want to be a marine firefighter because they're not the friendliest fires that we can face.
Do you have a mate who can help him?
We'll follow the action in an actual ship-shore fire exercise and hear expert commentary from some of the key players, including the United States Coast Guard, which monitors fire safety practices in American ports.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said that certainly in a crisis, the best decision is the right decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision, and the worst decision is no decision.
Our focus here is on the ship side of the ship-shore interface. What's different about fighting a fire when you're in port? What's the same? And what should you do?
To work effectively, ships and their crews must work safely. Developing a safety culture will prevent personal injuries on board ships. It's not only the safe and smart way to operate, it's also mandatory.
Running a safe ship is important to those who own it, to those who man it, and to those who entrust it with their cargo. It's also an important new emphasis of the revised STCW Convention and the ISM Code.
Specifically, the ISM Code requires ship owners and managers to develop a safety management system that will provide for safe practices in ship operation, establish safeguards against risk, and continuously improve safety management skills. In this program, we'll feature the insight and commentary of author Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, sets out the basic steps in building a true safety culture on board ship.
The worst way to do it is just to put a set of manuals on board the ship and say, follow these procedures and everything will be fine, because take it from me, it won't be. What it really is about is giving the people on the ship the ownership of the procedures. Let them have a part of it. When you're developing the procedures, go around the ship with them, take the people on board and take them to show you what safe practice is. It's an evolving process.
Turn it on by flipping this switch here.
We'll identify the 6 items of personal protective equipment recommended for individual protection. We'll discuss the ways ships can prevent accidents and injuries before they happen. And we'll see examples of the safe use of onboard tools and equipment.
How serious is the business of personal injury prevention? P&I clubs estimate that after cargo claims, personal injury and illness claims are their second largest category of claims registered, accounting for more than a third of the total. To dramatize the seriousness of this issue, we're going to introduce you to a couple of characters that are not quite so serious, to contrast the good and the bad.
Now, safety schmakety. Come on.
Safety at sea requires that we develop a safety culture, an environment where safety becomes an everyday priority and a process of continuous improvement.
In this program, we're going to look at some of the everyday work practices that can be improved with a greater attention to personal safety and injury prevention.
We'll highlight the use of the 6 essential pieces of personal protective equipment: boiler suits, steel-toed safety shoes, safety helmets, ear protection, gloves, and goggles.
We'll also feature commentary by loss prevention expert Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, is the best authority on the subject.
We can quantify costs, we can quantify the repatriation costs and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, people don't want to get hurt, and they don't want to let the side down.
There's a right way and a wrong way to approach safety. We'll show you both, using a little humor to make the contrast more obvious.
Hey! Are you sleeping on the job?
Ships that succeed at building a safety culture do 4 things well. They identify their safety problems and concerns. They provide proper equipment and training. They make safety an everyday priority. And they develop reporting systems so they can improve and take corrective action. Let's take a look at how it works. Just like any business, the maritime industry faces both opportunities and challenges. Do more with less. Reduce costs without compromising quality, operate more efficiently but also more safely, and continue to improve our people.
This little book is making a very big impact. It's called STCW 95, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers.
The STCW and its 1995 amendments are more than just rules. They're a closer focus on people, how we teach them, evaluate them, and keep track of their progress.
STCW can be confusing. Different people have different interpretations. Our purpose here is to find some consensus and give you a common sense approach to complying with STCW on board your ship.
I think the key thing to remember is it sets a base standard and that we want all of the professional mariners to comply with.
What the STCW code is asking for is a slight raising of the standards. They're going to find that the company has a little bit more responsibility to assure that certain things are happening on board the ship, assure that their crews aren't being overworked, assure that they're getting familiarization training, and that when they're on board that they are competent at the abilities that they are supposed to be competent at. It's asking for an extra level of oversight to make sure that things are operating okay.
None of the new regulations require that a vessel float in a sea of paper. They require that responsibility and authority be tracked, and how you do that is up to your own company procedures.
We've divided this program into 8 major areas of compliance with comments from company officials and the United States Coast Guard. Their port state control officers may examine you in any of these areas to make sure you're in compliance with STCW. So, let's get started.
The first, we call it the human factor. No matter how much we inspect and improve our ships and our equipment, it's people, procedures, and practice that make for safe shipping.
You may already be aware that over 80% of the incidents and accidents that occur aboard ship are due to human error. What you may not be aware of is a whole new set of regulations and procedures that focus in on this human factor. Among the most important of these is shipboard familiarization.
Every ship is different. Good seafarers have always familiarized themselves with the specifics, equipment, procedures, duties. But now, shipboard familiarization is more than just good practice. It's the law.
You're seeing less and less regulations being written to modify and change machinery. They've recognized that we've modified machinery enough to the point to where it's rarely a problem in an incident. They're finding more that it's becoming the problem of the human factor, the person, or management policies, and that sort of thing.
The STCW code says companies must ensure that all seafarers who are newly joining a ship are given reasonable opportunity to become familiar with the shipboard equipment, procedures, and arrangements needed for proper performance of their duties before being assigned to those duties.
Familiarization is important in whichever vessel any crew member joins. All vessels are different, all have different procedures, all have different equipment. Even if two sister vessels, you will find it hard to believe, we have got 5 sister vessels of the same type, and all 5 of them may have differences in various equipment.
In this program, we're going to introduce you to the basics